Hello, welcome again to FairtaX Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton,
I'm Bob Scarborough.
and we are the FairtaX Guys.
Back in action.
Yes, first time in 3 weeks. This has been just us. Of course, Randy Fisher on the social media for a couple of weeks, and last week we talked to Professor Kendall, the economics professor, and he had some really interesting stuff to say about the consumption tax versus the income tax versus tariffs. So if you did not catch that program, I would suggest you go back into the Rumble archive or you go back into the YouTube archive that we've got here on the FairtaX Guys YouTube channel. Check that out. He's pretty cool guy to talk to.
He's a professor at the University of Virginia, and he has classes that sort of alternate between economics and finance.
Yeah, public finance, he said, is something that
And I asked him about the young people that he's teaching. He says most of them are around 20 years old, and some of them are sort of, well, I don't know if I see my money going to Social Security, and is it going to be there when I get ready to use it, and that kind of thing. And these are all rail of politics when you start talking about those entitlements. But at some point in time, I would think that the younger will be a greater catalyst for switching from an income tax to a tax on consumption, because we know that the base pool of contributors to the federal government, the Treasury Department, there's a greater number of people at the consumption level versus the income tax level.
absolutely.
So that these entitlements, if you want to look at it that way, Social Security, and who knows, you may want to consider a way to opt out of it at some point. And
I don't think they're going to give you a way to opt out of it. It would be nice if they could, but who knows?
Those sections of what we have come to expect in financial support from the federal government, all rely on what comes into the Treasury. And we know that the tax on consumption will bring a considerably greater amount, at least an opportunity, to make whole or support or make solvent Medicare and Social Security.
I tell you, something I haven't gotten to do for 3 weeks
Yeah,
is to drop in on the Congress critters and see what they are up to as far as making changes to the tax code. You go to congress.gov, you put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes into the search function. Be sure you're looking only at legislation in the current Congress. And as of the day we are recording this, which is February 14th, you do that, you will get 224 hits. Now, Congress started in early January. It's now mid-February. So there have been less than 50 calendar days since the thing. I don't know how many of those days they were actually in session. But with 224 changes in less than 50 days, that tells you the magnitude with which the Congress critters like to mess with the tax code. And so let's see if we can figure this one out. This is H.R. 1347 to amend the Internal Revenue Code. Get this, to permanently extend the allowance for depreciation, amortization, or depletion for the purposes of determining the income limitation on the deduction for business interest. Got that?
no, no,
I didn't. That is one of the reasons why the tax code is as incomprehensible as it is. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to permanently extend the allowance for depreciation, amortization, or depletion for the purposes of determining the income limitation on the deduction for business interest. I'm sure there's a lobbyist that's behind that one. There always is. That one's also got a companion bill in the Senate, S-559. But that's Representative Adrian Smith from Nebraska. But say we got a lot of stuff to go over because we hadn't been able to do this for the past couple of weeks here on the program. H.R. 1328 to amend the Internal Revenue Code. Get this, to establish the critical supply chains reshoring investment tax credit. This is a representative Nicole Maliotakis. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She's from New York, District 11. Wants to establish an investment tax credit to bring critical supply chains back to our shore. Hey, I got a much better way to do that. HR 25.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I tell you what, you need a tax credit to bring critical supply chains back to that's crazy. All you got to do is make it economically the best decision to locate in this country, produce in this country, and you do that by getting rid of the corporate income tax, which again is just a cost of doing business that's passed on to the consumer anyway. So just get rid of all this corporate taxation like the FAIRtax does, become the world's tax haven, and I can guarantee critical supply chains, non-critical supply chains, and everything else that you can think of will want to relocate to the United States, and we won't have to worry about all this stuff sitting in container ships offshore because the dock workers are on strike. You know, that's it could go on forever on that one.
That's right.
All right, let me find another one here. How about HR 1293, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide tax incentives and fees for increasing motor vehicle fuel economy and for other purposes. You use the tax code to promote increased fuel economy in our vehicles. How crazy is that? That's Representative Sean Casten of Illinois. No comment on that one, huh?
Just after a minute or two, you're just glaze over with all of the complexities of these seemingly important, and I'm sure that they are to the representatives that are putting them out there. But why in the tax code? I mean, we this is where we end up because we realize that the tax code is being used for purposes other than just exacting a correct tax. It picks winners and losers in a particular industry or a particular bill, or some area of of the country in a particular state, and that just causes more confusion than is necessary, especially if it's a part of the tax code that doesn't affect the majority of people. You're focusing in on one little area and that's what's so confounding. And I think that's the biggest thing about the FAIRtax that kind of clears all that up, because the Internal Revenue Service goes, the tax code goes away, and we always try to highlight in the first few minutes of our program on a weekly and sometimes every so often basis to let folks know that this is what's happening with your tax code. One thing I like about what's going on, and a lot of people have challenges with the current administration, but one thing I like is that we're shining this huge spotlight on the ability to rein in spending in our government. I'm finding that to be very very exciting to watch, because it's our money that's being misused. I'll put it that way, to put it lightly.
All right, well, let's add a little more confusion to the pile here. This is HR 1264, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to eliminate lead oxide, antimony, and sulfuric acid as taxable chemicals under the Superfund excise taxes. So I don't know that there's much we could say about this one. I got a little comment on this next one. This is HR 1253. This is from a Representative Dusty Johnson, South Dakota, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a tax on the sale of electric vehicles and batteries. Now, isn't that crazy? You use the tax code, the Congress critters are using the tax code for so many different purposes. It is just inevitable that the one will want to do one thing and somebody else will want to do something different. Right now, you get a tax credit for buying on electric vehicles. So the contingent that wants to use the tax code to incentivize you to buy an electric vehicle has their way. But then this bill, H.R. 1253, wants to establish a tax on the sale of electric vehicles and other batteries. So the tax code is constantly at conflict with itself. I guess depending on which side of the aisle is trying to, throw their monkey wrench into the works there. But there we go. That just struck me that that is entirely different from what the tax code currently is trying to incentivize people to do regarding buying electric vehicles. So Representative Johnson wants to tax the sale of electric vehicles, which of course would tend to suppress demand for them. And so it's just crazy that we have a tax code that is used in that fashion. We need to get rid of it, as we say, pull it out by the roots and replace it with the fair tax.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. And I think there's momentum going in the federal, in the bureaucracy. Folks are having to, our elected representatives are having to decide whose team are they going to be on. I mean, we have this Department of Government Efficiency that's going through all of the administrative branch of the government's departments that are under the purview of the control of the administrative executive office. So, people are saying, well, don't you want to see government waste brought under control and highlighted and brought about? And I think that's where we are now. There are a lot of people that, from a political standpoint, that are, deciding which side they need to be on this. And like I said a minute ago, I'm kind of excited to see what turns up. Whether or not it's being handled in the right way, that's not a debate for our show. The fact that it's happening is a good thing, I think, especially when you get down to the fact that they're knocking on the door at the Internal Revenue Service now.
There we go. I tell you what, it's funny. It's really amusing to watch some of these politicians that, again, are based largely more for political motivation than any kind of logical thinking or reasoning, but just their political motivation. They are standing up and defending fraud, waste, and abuse because all these folks that are saying all these horrible things about Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency. I think Vivek Ramaswamy was smart to duck there. They're not shooting at him anymore. But anyway, all of the DOGE has certainly, in the short time it's been working, has really ruffled some feathers, and it's funny to watch these politicians come out against DOGE, which by definition means they are in favor of government waste and inefficiency and what and all that. And we've been talking about, oh mercy, what would Elon Musk do? What would the Department of Government Efficiency do with the Internal Revenue Service? And you sent me an article here from Epoch Times that announced where the president has announced that he is indeed going to sic Mr. Musk and the DOGE on the IRS. There's some cool stuff in this article.
Well, and that particular article, there are hundreds of others over the last 12 to 20 hours prior to the recording of our program on Friday, February 14th. Regarding the Department of Government Efficiency going to the Internal Revenue Service, but the Internal Revenue Service is not being singled out. There are every other department under the executive branch is getting the visit, if you will, and a lot of the detractors to the whole process are, what about privacy concerns and these types of things? And I don't want to turn our conversation today into a debate about whether it's right or wrong, but the simple fact that we now have a group that has been authorized by the executive branch to go and determine where certain cuts can be made to make the government more efficient, to take find out where waste and fraud is taking place. And who knows? I mean, there are plenty of lawsuits out there that are being thrown at the Department of Government Efficiency and at the administration regarding the technique. But at least we are now getting
Wow.
some a look into a forensic, if you will, look into how our government is operating on the administrative, on the executive branch side.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's funny to watch some of those people who are again trying to defend their little piece of the pie when it comes to, hey, if I'm benefiting from the fraud, if I'm benefiting from the abuse, if I'm benefiting from all this stuff that DOGE is trying to get rid of, then I'm going to oppose that effort.
I I,
But
I
but
try to pick I try to pick something. I try to pick an article that was nonpartisan.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I love the very first sentence of this thing. The IRS will be audited by the Department of Government Efficiency, President Trump said on February 13th, which was yesterday as we're recording this on the 14th. But yet we've been thinking, what would happen if that happens? And well, it's going to. It doesn't give any timeline as to when
well,
those folks are going to be there, but they do say the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else, Trump told reporters at the White House in Washington. And I mean, how long is it going to take to go through an agency that massive? I mean, hundreds of thousands of people work for the IRS. They've got all kinds of stuff going on all over the place. It's going to take a while to do the kind of digging that DOGE needs to do in the Internal Revenue Service. I am absolutely convinced that once they figure out what's going on in there, uh, there are going to be more than just a few of us that want to get rid of the entire agency and replace the income tax with something that's a lot simpler, a lot fairer, and a lot easier to administer, less fraud prone, less error. I mean, you could go on forever. The advantages of the fair tax over the income tax. And when the DOGE gets in there and sees just how bad the IRS is, then I think we're going to earn some more converts to the fair tax cause.
well, and that's the option that makes the most sense, as we believe, and as we do on this program on a weekly basis, we discuss the benefits of a tax on consumption versus the income tax. And you look at the Internal Revenue Service and the myriad challenges that they have packed into the tax code in terms of navigation, in terms of compliance that makes it difficult for even a little guy like me to navigate my own personal income tax for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back to the story at hand. Again, we're recording this on Friday, February 14th. Thursday, at least one member of the Department of Government Efficiency team was at the Internal Revenue Service offices as part of the mission to evaluate and potentially downsize government agencies. This is a report that was offered by CNN. The DOGE member made a series of requests, including a description of what each business unit in the IRS does, what it's looking to deliver on in the next 90 days, and what risks each unit currently faces, according to a source that was familiar with the information. It was not immediately clear whether the DOGE member accessed any IRS systems, but the source said it seemed he's just getting a lay of the land at the moment. No indication Thursday that sensitive Internal Revenue Service information had been accessed. The visitors, basically just kind of looking and seeing what's going on. Now, one thing that I did read in a couple of articles that I've seen this morning is that they're looking at some not possible non-essential contracts that could be part of the initial cost cutting. This article in investmentnews.com, and again, I tried to find a nonpartisan article that would allow us to sort of look at it from a standpoint of paring down. You and I think, we just need to pull it out by the roots. But in all fairness to the process, looking at a way to make those departments under the executive branch's control more efficient and looking at waste and fraud, et cetera. Members of the Internal Revenue Service, this is from investmentnews.com, members of the Internal Revenue Service are reportedly on edge as a member of the Department of Government Efficiency team paid a visit to the agency, signaling heightened security of the tax agency as the administration pushes for cost-cutting measures across federal government. According to multiple news outlets, a senior staffer on the team of DOGE came to the IRS Thursday requesting information on, as we just said, each of its business units, etc. While there was no immediate indication that the person accessed IRS systems, employees were reportedly uneasy about the presence of an outsider evaluating the agency's operations. Well, I think you can.
Wow, wonder why.
I think you can say that for all of the agencies, the departments that are under the scrutiny of the Department of Government Efficiency. And that Department of Government Efficiency has been around. Matter of fact, it was started years ago by Bill Clinton. It's just operating under a different name with essentially a different mission, but it was already an established department within the executive branch.
Oh, mercy. I tell you, the one sentence in this Epoch Times article that I found rather dismaying was that Trump said he did not expect the IRS, which is currently processing 2024 taxes, to be shuttered. So Trump at this point is kind of not looking to shut down the IRS, but then at the same time, he says he wants to get rid of the income tax. So again, we'll just see. And again, the reaction to what's happening here is pretty interesting. Senator Wyden of Oregon, he went on the social media and says Musk's hitchmen are going and are in a position to dig through a trove of data about every taxpayer in America. And if your refund is delayed, that could very well be the reason. Well, I kind of doubt that. But anyway, it's going to be fun to watch the political back and forth as this goes on. And again, there is more interest in the FAIRtax. I meant to mention earlier in our Congress.gov segment, there's another section there on Congress.gov where you can look at the most viewed bills, the bills that are generating the most interest, the ones that most people are looking at. And for the past couple of weeks, HR 25 has been in the top 10. I think last week it was the number third most viewed bill. This week it dropped down to number 7, but it's still, I mean, among the thousands and thousands of bills that are introduced there, that to think that the FAIRtax is finally getting some attention among the top 10 most viewed bills on Congress.gov over the past couple of weeks. So that tells you that there is going to be a groundswell of support. And I think when DOGE gets through with the IRS, and again, people see just how much waste and inefficiency there is. We've documented cases where the IRS has sent refunds, literally hundreds of refunds to the same address. Now I guarantee there aren't 100 people living at the same address that all get a refund. It's a scammer sending stuff to there. But IRS needs to be gone. Just on the basis of how inefficient and how, what a rotten thing it is.
I think that folks have probably more concern about the Internal Revenue Service being shuttered as others have basically been concerned. Other departments of the federal government are concerned about that. The Department of Education, we can talk about all day long about all of the ramifications around need for particular components within a particular department. But I think the fact that the Internal Revenue Service faces and probably touches the American public more than most of the other agencies do outside of the Department of Education. Yeah, the Department of Transportation, we got to worry about potholes and things like that. But in terms of the timing of our now in the tax season of making sure that, we get our refund from the money that they've already collected, by April 15th, folks are concerned about that. I don't think that's going to happen. I very seriously doubt it would. It would cause a train wreck of monumental proportions in a lot of different ways. So my thinking is that we have a time now where we get to look and see what is not essential within the Internal Revenue Service, and also how to automate some of those processes that will make it, at least in the short term, in the near term, a better operation. Near term meaning within the next 18 months, I would think.
Yeah, well, they can get off of DOS 3.1 to start with, but the point should be made that even if the fair tax were to become law tomorrow, there is still a timeline that is several years long within the fair tax bill that allows the IRS to continue working on cases, that it's currently working on. So again, if the fair tax were to take effect tomorrow, there would still be several years worth of work for the IRS. It would not go away immediately. The funding for the IRS would eventually dry up, but it's no matter what DOGE finds, the IRS is not going to go away, just overnight. But the fair tax wouldn't wipe it out overnight. But hopefully in the long run, as Professor Kendall was talking about last week, the economic long run, we would be most beneficial to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, and hopefully we can pull that off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks have a rightful concern about their personal, private information, but we can go back to several articles over the last number of years that focus on personal data being breached, not only in the Internal Revenue Service, but across many of the internet platforms that folks may have their information in. So,
but I suggest that we have a tax system that does not collect personal information.
All right.
Under the fair tax, you pay your taxes anonymously at the cash register when you buy things. You do not have to tell the government a thing about how much you make, where you make it, what you spend it on, how much you spent at the doctor's office, how much you spent for daycare, how much you gave to all of the financial information. I mean, that is I think the two most personal pieces of personal information are your medical records and your financial records. And, with the fair tax, your financial records, your personal finances become absolutely, positively none of the government's business.
Right. And that's, I think, the hook for keeping the income tax that all the people in the government like, because they know everything about you, your business. They know all the money that you have. They have the whole schmear in there. The Department of Government Efficiency is not necessarily looking at the system within the Internal Revenue Service that manages that aspect, that manages our personal information. They're more interested in looking at, according to this report that I've been reading from, DOGE is requesting to review the system the agency uses for internal accounting operations, such as payroll and purchasing, according to somebody that was in the view of that request.
Indeed.
Not the system that handles our personal information, tax liabilities.
It's going to be an interesting thing to watch unfold, and we will keep on top of it here at FAIRtax Power Radio for sure. But that is all the time we got for this edition. In fact, we're over just a little bit, so we're going to have to wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching and listening and sharing the videos. That helps a lot when you share these things to your various social media accounts. But until we meet again, we're going to have to leave it right here. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000. Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is 23%.
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh, you bring home every penny.